Good evening, my name is Kacper Paradowski and welcome to Poland Daily News. The Supreme Court passed a resolution yesterday calling into question the election of judges by the President on the recommendation of the National Council of the Judiciary. According to some lawyers, as well as politicians of the ruling camp, this move places the Supreme Court above the Constitution.
Yesterday's resolution of the Civil, Criminal, and Labor Chambers of the Supreme Court, announced by the first president of this institution, Małgorzata Gersdorf, caused a political uproar. This resolution invalidates the election of judges appointed by the National Council of the Judiciary by the President. The Supreme Court Disciplinary Board issued a statement today in which it emphasizes that despite this resolution, its judges will continue to rule.
In his statement towards the resolution of the Supreme Court, Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki said that, according to him, this institution falls within his powers of the Constitutional Tribunal. The head of government announced a question to the Constitutional Tribunal regarding the examination of the compliance of the resolution adopted by the Supreme Court with the Constitution. Only the Constitutional Tribunal has the jurisdiction to resolve this competence dispute. This is what the Tribunal was called to do in the Constitution, and this is the first area which clearly shows that the resolution requires verification. I would like to emphasize the seriousness of this case, as the Supreme Court judges assigned themselves the right to legislate, while only the Sejm and Senate have this right in the constitutional order of Poland. Hence my serious doubts about this resolution. Politicians of the ruling camp and the opposition have differing opinions on the matter of the Supreme Court's decision. The only thing both sides agree on is that Poland is currently facing an unprecedented institutional crisis. At the moment, there is a very serious competence dispute between the supreme organs of the state. The authority competent to settle this dispute is the Constitutional Tribunal. It is very good that Prime Minister Morawiecki submitted a request to the Constitutional Tribunal in this case, alongside the request for an accelerated procedure for dealing with this matter. We are dealing with an extremely dangerous situation right now.
The resolution of the Supreme Court is an opportunity to end the paralysis of the state, to end chaos in the judiciary system, because the resolution of the Supreme Court organizes the situation. The controversies surrounding the judicial reform are likely to continue, as Brussels have signaled that they will not stand idle.
Today, the European Commission turned to the European Court of Justice, asking it to apply interim measures against Poland's newly introduced disciplinary system for judges. Yesterday, the Polish Parliament adopted a bill related to the matter, which is now ready to be sent to the President's desk. Representatives of the President-Chancellery say that the President will sign the bill.
Ustawa dyscyplinująca sędziów przyjęta wczoraj przez Sejm.
The bill on the disciplinary system for judges was adopted yesterday by the Sejm. The opposition was against it. Małgorzata Kidawa-Błońska called it a coup d'etat. She also claimed that by adopting the bill, the Law and Justice Party is trying to make Poland leave the European Union.
The bill violates the Polish and the European Union's law. The reaction of opposition politicians is natural. This isn't the first time that the Law and Justice Party is destroying Poland's image in the international arena. We should wait and see what the Polish government will do, and then we will know more details about the whole situation. We also have to wait and see whether the European Court of Justice will adopt the bill or not. The Parliament's function is to make laws. If Mr. President decides to sign the bill, then the situation will finally be clear.
Next week, the Vice President of the European Commission, Vera Jourova, is going to visit Poland to enter into dialogue with the Polish government about this matter.
The Polish flag carrier lot has taken over the German charter airline Condor, which is part of the global brand of the recently bankrupt travel agency Thomas Cook. Condor serves approximately 7 million passengers a year. Its fleet of 42 aircraft includes both Airbus and Boeing planes. The Condor route network includes 87 routes, many of them to exotic destinations. LOT Polish Airlines carried over 10 million passengers in 2019 and currently flies to over 120 destinations.
Odważny, ale zarazem rozważny ruch.
A very brave but also prudent movement of LOT Polish Airlines. It is worth remembering the plans that the previous Civic Platform government had towards LOT. One can recall phrases that were fashionable at the time, saying that LOT was due to close. Some have put it even more brutally. One of our first decisions in power was to keep LOT, give the company a chance, and at this point I would like to thank all the company's employees for having transformed their company in such a great way. Naturally, I would also like to thank the management, president, the board, but the employees first.
Prowadzili transformację swojej firmy.
Mamy takie firmy jak Polskie Linie Lotnicze LOT.
We have companies such as LOT Polish Airlines, which are able to go beyond Poland, who are able to appear as champions of Polish business on a European scale, bigger than just enclosed within our country.
Tylko zamknięty w granicach naszego kraju.
The annual March for Life is taking place in Washington, D.C. today. It's the largest pro-life event in the world, and this year's edition will be historical, as Donald Trump will be the first ever sitting U.S. president to attend the march.
Donald Trump became the first U.S. president to attend the annual March for Life held in Washington today, underscoring his outspoken support for the anti-abortion movement as it celebrates key legislative gains.
It is my profound honor to be the first president in history to attend the March for Life. We're here for a very simple reason: to defend the right of every child, born and unborn, to fulfill their God-given potential.
Thousands of protesters from around the country converged in the national's capital for the event, which began in 1973 after the U.S. Supreme Court, in its Roe v. Wade decision, established a woman's constitutional right to get an abortion.
They are coming after me because I am fighting for you, and we are fighting for those who have no voice, and we will win because we know how to win.
With the 2020 presidential campaign season heating up, abortion remains one of the most divisive issues in the United States.
That is all for tonight. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for Poland Daily Business. Good night.
I'm Aleksandra Zarzycka and welcome to Poland Daily Weather. Let's take a look at the forecast for tonight. Overcast sky in northern part of the country. On the south, sky will be cloudless. The temperature will fall to -4 degrees in Kraków, a bit warmer in central. There the temperature will range from -1 degree to 0. The highest temperature we will notice in Koszalin and Gdańsk, 3 degrees. And now over to tomorrow. Sunny weather is expected on the south and on the east. Rainfall will appear on the northwest. Little snowfall we will see over Rzeszów, but there the sun will be breaking through the clouds frequently as well. Temperatures will rise on the northwest to 6 degrees. In the rest of the country, temperature will range from 3 to 5 degrees. Let's see the forecast for the next days. Sunday will be quite sunny, especially on the northeast and in central. On Monday, we will see more rainfalls, but the temperature will rise. On Tuesday, temperatures will increase to even 10 degrees over Katowice. Rain will appear across Poland. Thank you for watching and see you soon.
Poland Daily Business Edition. Davos in Switzerland is a focal point for all those interested in the world economic affairs. Piotr Palutkiewicz is our guest tonight. Sir, welcome to the show.
Hello, good evening.
What is the Polish position at Davos this year?
In this year and the last year, the position of Poland is becoming better on that event. First of all, we've got their own house, their own Polish house at that summit. The house is a place where the meetings are made, meetings of big Polish entrepreneurs and politicians with the business partners from across the world. So that's a good public relation issue, the idea of setting creating this house was a good idea, and the results are visible. For example, the cooperation between the big companies from the Central European region. So that's the one new thing that was established this year in the Polish House in Davos.
And we are definitely looking for export markets for our domestic production and for the investment in our market, direct investment in high technologies. Are there any examples of such developments already?
Yeah, yesterday the big pharmaceutical company AstraZeneca announced that it's going to establish its own research and development center in Poland. This is a big investment, 1.5 billion of zlotys within the 5-year period. But what is most important is that that investment will be research and development center. We are not establishing the investment in the, for example, the montage of simple factories or being in the middle of the chain. This is the beginning of chain. The research and development is the most is the area with the biggest margins and where the most qualified employees are hired.
Which
so
will also help to keep those talents that normally emigrate to Europe or United States here in the local market.
In the local market in Poland, but unfortunately that center will be established in Warsaw. The better idea and the better message would be that the center, those international investments, would be concentrated in another cities, for example, Wrocław, Gdańsk, or Krakow, the cities where there are a lot of qualified people, a lot of qualified students, and those cities are a good market for such international investments as well.
The city of Łódź, about 120 kilometers of Warsaw, is an interesting spot for such investment, especially given that between Warsaw and Łódź there is going to be the central communication hub Solidarity, airport, railway nut, and of course highway connection that will merge those two cities and shorten the travel time. Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki went to Davos from Japan when he spoke exactly about this strategic investment in Poland. Why in Japan, not in China?
First of all, we've got 100 years of cooperation, diplomatic relationship between Poland and Japan, and since 2015, this is a strategic cooperation. But so far, we haven't seen any tangible results of that cooperation, and we hope that after that visit, that mutual relationship between Poland and Japan will increase, and those cooperation when it comes to the central airport in Poland might be the first big cooperation and the point of cooperation between our countries, because we haven't have any experience when it comes to building big airports in Poland.
So
and
we
need
wanted
the
to learn on
international
somebody
partner.
else's mistakes.
Yeah, and Japan has that experience, and maybe Japan engineers and Japan strategic advisors will advise when it comes to that investment.
Another idea, here's the Japanese expertise in high-speed railway network that will lead to this airport, and also with high-temperature nuclear reactor.
Yeah, so as we can see, there are a lot of areas for the future cooperation in Poland where the Japanese investors have that experience. So like energy, infrastructure investments, maybe that will be those areas.
So this is very interesting. Hopefully we'll push forward Poland's agenda. Piotr Palutkiewicz of Association of Entrepreneurs and Employees was our guest. Sir, thank you very much for this conversation. And that was it for tonight's Poland Daily Business.
Welcome back to Poland Daily Weather. Let's take a look at the forecast for tomorrow. Sunny weather is expected on the south and on the east. Rainfall will appear on the northwest. Little snowfall we will see over Rzeszów, but there the sun will be breaking through the clouds frequently as well. Temperature will rise on the northwest to 6 degrees. In the rest of the country, temperature will range from 3 to 5 degrees. Let's see the forecast for our continent. On the Iberian Peninsula, temperatures will increase to 14 degrees in Lisbon and 11 in Madrid. In Central Europe, we are expecting more sunlight. Still warm in the Balkans. There, the temperature will range from 7 to 14 degrees in Athens. Over Stockholm, snowfall will appear. Thank you for watching and goodbye.
Good day, everyone. My name is Maria Kądzielska, and you are watching Poland Daily Culture. Our today's guest is the most British Pole you will ever meet. He remains deeply connected to Polish-British Parliamentary Group and became an expert in our bilateral relations. Ladies and gentlemen, George Baczyński.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So let's figure out what's happening on the other side of the British Channel.
When I'm in trouble, I recite to myself, Main and Aedith Ea Peleia Joe Wakileos, Ulomanein, Homuria Kaios Algiatheke, Palast if the moose psukas Aedi proeapsin, Hero own, Autuste Hiloria Teuki Kunestin, Oyonosi de Passi, Diostia Teleto Bule, Ex hude ta prota, Diestatene erisante, Atreides Hianaxandron Kai Dios, Achilles.
George, Britain has a new Prime Minister already for some time, Boris Johnson, but he recently maintained his position even more strongly after winning the election with such a huge majority. But let's touch the topic of culture. We've seen him on TV, actually on the air, when he spoke a huge passage of Iliad in ancient Greek. So it seems he's pretty well educated, more than lots of people, especially in Poland, thought. Is it true?
Absolutely. I think for anyone who hasn't seen the video of him reciting Iliad should definitely do so right now. It's quite incredible, but he also speaks Latin. He's very well educated. Eton, Oxford, he read classics at Oxford. He took over the Oxford Union. He organized plenty of events with very top figures, and he's always shown his interests in the history of our civilizations. When he recited the Iliad, that was during an event that was titled Ancient Greece versus Ancient Rome. Isn't that just beautiful to hear such a debate? I couldn't attend it, but it was fully booked. Hundreds and hundreds of people filled the room, and everybody listened to that interesting talk.
And knowing so well Polonia in UK, what is their opinion about new Prime Minister?
I think it really depends on how you stand on Brexit, because sadly, if you disagree with a person in politics, for example, if you're against Brexit or if you're very concerned about Brexit, then you will be less likely to read about Boris Johnson, really deeply understand him, read his biographies, listen to what he has done over the years, and you may have slightly unobjective view. I think he's an incredible politician, whether one likes him or not. It was very difficult during the negotiation period when the parliament was pretty much shut down, couldn't go any way. The whole country was quarreling. It was deeply divided, more divided than I've ever seen it in my lifetime. And there were important arguments before, such as the Iraq War, etc. But Brexit remains a very important thing that people have different opinions about. When it comes to Polonia, it depends. I think that Poles remember him positively from being a mayor. He was a very good mayor, I think. He introduced cycling to a level that hasn't been seen before. Even today, we call the bikes Boris bikes that you can
Really?
rent.
I've never heard about
even
it.
though it was Ken Livingstone's ideas before, but he made such an impact on it. The Olympics that he organized in London was also part of his success, and he met Polonia. So on a number of occasions, I remember whether visiting Ognisko. At the moment, his constituency is Uxbridge, where the Polish War Memorial is located. So he attended a number of events at this beautiful war memorial. For anyone who hasn't seen it, it's really worth visiting. It's in West London, very tall, monumental, has the names of the Polish squadrons who have fought in the Battle of Britain and other battles together with the Brits, and he was there laying wreaths commemorating the Poles. I also remember when he visited, I think it was in 2014, he came to commemorate the Warsaw Uprising. There was a special event. I've helped to invite some people to it. There were 3 last British pilots who supported the Warsaw Uprising that were there at that event as well. Boris Johnson was, of course, the main speaker, but those people, and as you know, when the Brits were not allowed to help Poles in the Warsaw Uprising, and Churchill actually, you know, we can have differing opinions about Winston Churchill's role when it comes to Poland, but he genuinely wanted to help the uprising, and Stalin didn't let the British pilots, British Air Force, to stop to land anywhere. And those 3 pilots, last time they went to Warsaw was in 1944, and they didn't go to Warsaw, they were just above Warsaw, and I saw them hugging the veterans of Armia Krajowa, of the Home Army, who remembered those weapons that were thrown down, and they were crying and hugging each other. And Boris Johnson was there, so I spent the minute of silence with him, and you know, you can sometimes see whether somebody cares or not, especially if there's no cameras around. And he really stood there during that minute of silence. He didn't look troubled, or that he really felt it. He wanted to understand why the Poles suffered so much, why the Poles fought in those days. So I think generally he has a positive opinion. Of course, if you're deeply against Brexit, then you will see him as one of the fathers of Brexit. And so many people criticize him and think, you know, he's leading Britain the wrong way. But you know, who knows? We're all hopeful that we will end up with a good deal, and that Poles will be able to live, work and study as they do now in the UK. And for that, you do need a strong leader. So I'm hopeful personally. I think people know that the times are difficult. So you may need a slightly more eccentric and tougher Prime Minister than we've had before.
So at least we know that Boris Johnson knows things about Poland. He's been to Poland and he understands our issues. Do you think, what is his approach to Polonia in UK? Is he more about keeping them there on the islands, or maybe sending some parts of Polonia back home?
Well, we will really see in the upcoming months, but I think it makes no economic sense, and as we know, people look for their own interests, national interests. It is in the British national interest to keep as many Poles as possible, because Poles are the most hardworking. All the data statistics prove it. I think the Polish minority in the UK has a higher percentage of being hired than any other minority in the whole country. It really speaks volumes. People have a positive opinion about Poles. Why would you kick out such people? People that are of a similar religion, well, same religion really, people who obey the law. The crime statistics also show it. You know, maybe there will be a fight or 2 caused by Poles in some cities, but that's really it. There is no, you know, murders committed by Poles or rapes or anything of that sort on a larger scale. So I think that Britain and Boris Johnson will do everything in his capacity to keep the Poles in.
Absolutely, that's actually very good to hear, especially if you have relatives living in UK, and it seems that all of us have at least friends living there. So Poles shouldn't be that much afraid of him being in the office, in your opinion?
Well, I think we shouldn't be, of course. you cannot really trust anyone in politics. Things change, right? There's new deals coming over, new arguments, and sometimes somebody can be thrown under the bus. So I think Polonia has a very important challenge, very important mission to look at what Boris Johnson is saying, what is he doing, what his government is doing, and we need to be lobbying as hard as possible so they're close to their commitments, that they fulfill their commitments. So it's in everybody's interest that we go to Parliament, make sure that the MPs, those who are voting, and the government knows of our presence, they know of our activity. Because if we're the silent minority, which I'm afraid we have been for a while. We do not have so many leaders. We do not have so many people fighting for our cause as some other minorities have. So we need to keep on watching them and making sure that there is a good deal that has already been signed, that as many people as possible sign accept the settled status, and that there is no more major issues on the way. But we'll really see.
It is an important message to Polish Polonia to make the lobbying of our cause and to remember people, especially British parliamentary members, about presence of Polish people in UK. And that's your most important goal to reach. And thank you for watching Poland Daily Culture.
Welcome back to Poland Daily History, where we're talking about President Putin's rather extraordinary attempt to blame Poland, of all countries, for the outbreak of the Second World War. And we're discussing this with my studio guest, Stefan Thompson. Stefan, welcome back.
Thank you,
well,
Nicholas.
I mean, this is extraordinary, isn't it? And Putin, in many ways, is sort of mirroring this sort of rather irrational character that Stalin was. You know, the Russian fiction is that we had to invade Poland because the country had failed and we had to sort of rescue everybody. Conveniently forgetting the fact that we'd spent the previous period starving people in that part of the world deliberately. And the NKVD and this sort of terrible sort of regime of complete intolerance. You know, you read books on this, and one of the great ones, which you no doubt read, is Timothy Snyder's book, The Bloodlands. And, you know, you have this thing where, you know, I starve you to death, but your act of starving is, in fact, an act of defiance against me. I mean, this completely twisted mentality. And, of course, and therefore Poland, having been invaded by Germany and then invaded by the Soviet Union, I mean, this part of Poland, people suffered tremendous horror. You know, in terms of the number of civilian deaths. I'm not talking about the military deaths, which are bad enough, but this bloodthirsty evil of concentration camps, of just indiscriminate shooting. I mean, extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean, that is ultimately, eventually, where communism inevitably leads. And I think that this current historical debate is a very good time to reconsider what communism is and to reconsider what that form of totalitarianism leads to. And I think these are lessons that in Poland and in the Eastern Bloc, in post-communist countries, it's a lesson that has been profoundly understood, because that communism was imposed upon us with Soviet tanks. Whereas in Western Europe, I think to this day, communist totalitarianism is not entirely understood, not entirely comprehended, and very often, to certain degrees, it's whitewashed and given a pass that Nazism, a similar form of totalitarianism, is never given a pass, and rightfully so. So I think for us in Poland, this diplomatic row, in fact, was a very positive thing, because it allowed us to explain to the world what the Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact, to remind people what had happened, to remind people of the alliance between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, and now I think it's given us a platform to talk about what communism is and what communism leads to. And I think you've put your finger on it. I mean, it does. Mass starvation, I think, is really the main thing it inevitably leads to. The terror aside, I mean, the terror being a sort of bonus to the inevitable economic failure of that system, because it simply does not work. That's the very simple,
if you're
explanation.
deliberately exporting the grain which your people need to live on, then you blame them for starving. And you've starved to death. That's an act of defiance against me. Notwithstanding, the reason you're starving is because I took your food away. And this, I think, shows that the heart of communism, this complete irrationality, this impossibility for anybody who suffers it to be able to rationally deal with the system, because the system is wholly irrational. We saw this great cruelty. Really, I mean, when you read Snyder's book, it's just extraordinary. He estimates 14 million people, civilians, if they, women, children, just shot, killed, whatever. Extraordinary in this part of the world.
Just in this part of the world.
Exactly. There's that part, sort of just the other side of the Molotov-Ribbentrop line. Extraordinarily horrific. So for Putin now, as a sort of seemingly to reinvent himself as Stalin, to somehow claim that Poland is responsible for their horrors. But of course, everybody wants history to go their way, and from the Soviet, now the modern Russian point of view, the Second World War was the Great Patriotic War. In 1941, they say, we were invaded by Germany, we resisted the siege of Leningrad, we finally swept the Nazis back, we occupied Berlin, we liberated this part of Europe. And of course, it is a rather strange form of liberation when you actually, as you say in the video you made on this, which is well worth watching, by the way, that in actual fact, all that the liberation by the Red Army means is you swap one form of totalitarian horror for a new form of totalitarian horror.
And I think one of the things that marks that very poignantly is the fact that certain Nazi concentration camps and work camps were then turned into NKVD internment camps. Zgoda, Potulice, Łambinowice, Jaworzno, Majdanek. All of these were then used for varying lengths of time, some of them for several months, some of them for 2-3 years, were used as Soviet internment camps. People were killed there, people were tortured there, people were interrogated there, people were held there. And I think that really, the fact that this horror of these concentration camps, work camps, labor camps, continued into the after the war, that I think really shows you what communism is, and the fact that this freedom that they had brought was really merely this swapping of one really sick and twisted system and ideology for another. And this would go on in Poland for 45 years.
But I think also there was a particularly cruelty as a defective Poland, in that as the Red Army was moving through Poland, moving west towards Berlin, of course, there were units of the Polish Home Army helping to fight against the Germans.
That's right.
So on day one, they'd be welcomed by the Soviets as fight against the Germans, and on day two, once that, they would be taken out and shot or forced to join the Russian army for having somehow been disloyal. I mean, this seems to be a peculiarly anti-Polish stance by Stalin. That on the one hand, you're fighting with the Red Army against the Germans to liberate Poland, and but somehow by doing that you're somehow a traitor to the cause who are liable to be shot. Extraordinary.
And this is exemplified by the trial of the 16, the trial of the 16 underground leaders who had fought Nazi Germany for years, who were then invited to a meeting, guaranteed their safety by the Soviets, and then they were all deported into the Soviet Union. They were taken to Moscow and tried in a show trial, and many of them were executed in Moscow. I mean, that really shows you, I think, everything you need to know about the Soviet Union and the Soviet realities. And this is the very sort of saddening thing, was that Soviet crimes were then in Western Europe were excused by people. They were ignored by people for many years. In France, it took people well over a decade after the war to acknowledge the fact that actually perhaps not everything that was going on in the Soviet Union was hunky-dory.
Exactly.
You had leading intellectuals, leading public intellectuals in France defending the Soviet Union well into the mid-50s.
And that's something I think we look at in the next section. That's probably a good point to end this section. Thank you, Steph.
Thank you, Nicholas.
Join us for another episode in this exciting and really fascinating subject about Mr. Putin's attempt to blame Poland for the Second World War.
everybody. Here we are on the ramparts of Wawel Castle. If you want to know where it all began, this is it. This is where Krakow started. The first settlement was on this hill. It's a very big castle. It's all around us. We're about 20 meters in the air. And then there's another, 25-meter wall above us here. It's a nice wide rampart, commanding view of the Vistula River. And the Kosciuszko, I can never say that right, Kosciuszko, it's not easy for me. The Kosciuszko Mound up there, which affords a beautiful view of the city of Krakow, particularly on a nice day in the summer or the spring or the autumn. But this is not that time. It's not stopping us or any other tourists, it doesn't look like, from enjoying walking around in Krakow today. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people out. Behind me is the church of Stanislaw Kostka, who was a Jesuit who died very young. I think he died in 1568. He was 18 years old, I believe. He joined the church when he was 17 and only lasted a year. He died in Rome. This church was built in the 1930s. Note the striking 30s-esque architecture. It reminds me a little bit of the state capitol in Louisiana, built by Huey Long, or reminiscent of some buildings in New York City even, I think, or a couple of the older buildings in Krakow, some of the office buildings from that period of time, from the early 20th century. It's a nice building. It looks amazing at night as well when it's lit up. So we're here, and I might as well say that the other important cathedral in Krakow, the most important one, is here on the hill. Not quite as impressive as St. Mary's Basilica, you might think, but also equally important. And they also have a bell here, the Sigismunda bell, which is so loud that you can apparently hear it on Jupiter. That's not true. You can hear it about 30 miles away, which is pretty good for a bell. And but to see it, you have to climb a very high clock tower, church tower, which we're not doing today, or even a bell tower, a loose cobble on the hill. At any rate, folks, this is it. As we're losing the light, we need to go inside and see if we can't take you some nice pictures inside the courtyard, if they'll let us in with our cameras. And failing that, we are also going to head back to the center from the end of the royal route, and we are going to see the most fabulous medieval square in Europe, if not the whole world. Stay with us.
Krakow, the ancient capital of Poland, this capital city on the Vistula River in Lesser Poland, remained the hub of the kingdom until the year 1596, a leading center in Poland of economic, cultural, artistic, and academic life. Its old town with St. Mary's Basilica and the Old Cloth Hall is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. There is an enormous amount to see in Krakow, but you have to start somewhere. And we're going to start at the beginning of the Royal Way. It stretches from Florianska Church, outside the ancient walls, through the Florianska Gate, to Wawel Hill, the origin place of the city known as Krakow. There on Wawel Hill, Krakow grew over 1,000 years ago from what had been a Stone Age settlement to a thriving hamlet. It's a fascinating place, and it would take a month or two, or even a lifetime, to really get to know this ancient city. So if you will, by way of introduction, let's take a walk along the royal route from St. Florian's Church, down Florianska Street, into the square, that fine Old Town Square which UNESCO has recognized as one of the living monuments of civilization. Let's wander along the route, pausing to look at various quite stunning monuments, until we find ourselves by the rolling Vistula River, under the Wawel Hill, near the cave of Krakow's legendary dragon. It's Krakow. It's Poland. It's Poland Daily Travel. Stay with us.
Hello, everybody. We're here in the Sukiennice. That's the cloth hall in the center of the Rynek in Krakow. That's the Old Town Square. And I can tell you, this is one of the world's first shopping malls. Certainly one of the first shopping malls in Europe. Come on, let's see what they got. Oh yeah, if you're in a mood to buy amber, this is your place here. And your Krakow dragon. Excuse me, how much is the dragon?
45.
45 for the dragon. Okay, I'll keep that in mind. It's very nice. Thank you. Yeah. Yep. It's a dragon for $10. The essential Krakow kitsch souvenir. And then we have the Polish costumes here. You see all that? They're knockoffs of the mountain people's dress. Oh, there's some nice shirts here. If you like the woven shirts, those are more expensive, $100 each. Remember that nothing says I love Krakow or I love Poland like a refrigerator magnet. You have lots of, oh, this is famous. Again, the Polish pottery, the kitchenware, you know, and etc. Yeah. Well, we're walking against the crowd here. It's funny. People don't actually see. Can I see this? Yeah. $5. Very nice. Thank you. Oh, that's cool. I could look very silly in this. Mickiewicz from behind again. Look, you can see. Okay, come on.
Awesome. Your friend, because we can ask them to make.
Well, I haven't actually, I'm not a big shopper, so I haven't actually seen anything that I want to buy yet.